Hi, everyone. Please take your seats. Thank you for coming. I realized a little earlier in this week that Paula and I were placed in the last batch of talks before, or at the end of the day, where we've got a busy day for VR, lots of big announcements, lots of key demos, a brilliant keynote this morning. And so we're following some tough acts. And then on top of that, we also realized that we're the last show before all the beer and wine and general merriment. So we'll try to keep it entertaining. So I'm Robert Stevenson. I do content strategy for Oculus. And basically my day-to-day job is worrying about the business of content, what types of content we're engaged in, and how our content's distributed across the platform. This includes a very committed focus to things like movies, things like television, games, and tonight we're here to talk about music. So since the dawn of humanity, music has existed. Prehistoric music was thought to be rhythmic percussion, sticks and stones, primitive drums, even woodwind instruments like bone flutes, that kind of thing. And all of this was with cave dwellers, and this was all happening before pre-recorded history, so a long time ago. In the nearly 40 millennia, so think about that, 40,000 years since, we've seen tremendous progress. Music notation in the Renaissance, the phonograph in the 1800s, electric guitar in the 1930s, and modern music videos in 1981. Think about that for a moment. Think about that span of time. So music actually existed and has been known to humanity since before writing, before math, before law, all these things that we consider foundational components of our civilized society. Music is truly part of our fundamental fabric of humanity. On a personal level, we know this. So from the time we're kids, our parents would sing to us. We might go to sleep listening to a music box. We'd be a young adult or a teenager, be in our room listening to our favorite rock band, staring at the posters on our walls, dreaming of different places. And as adults, as we've traveled through our lives, maybe experienced loss or tragedy, fallen in love, we'll connect with a favorite song. And so music speaks to us at a personal level. So it's not just the fundamental fabric of humanity, but it's a fundamental part of our lives. As we experience music, we feel it's enhanced by its setting. So we could be listening to music in the car in traffic in the morning, and I do that every day for an hour, hour and a half. And we could be at the front row of a rock concert, right? Or we could be at an intimate performance with our favorite rock band in a club or in a studio. Or we could be that teenager dreaming of other places in your bedroom. Now, the flip side of all of this is VR. VR can help us, right? VR, the fundamental thing that it brings, and Mark was talking about this morning, is presence, right? That ability to transport the mind to another place, to experience something that's not easily done, not easily accessible, or maybe it's completely not possible to do it. And VR brings us to these places. And we've seen this throughout Oculus Connect. And if your senses believe that you're there, it really transports you and makes you there. So combining this power of presence and combining this intimate connection, this deep fundamental connection that we've got with music, there's a special magic that's created. And we're only at the tip of exploring this magic. And the people on the stage are pioneers in this space, exploring this new canvas of creativity. So what's happened to date? So top music artists have released experiences in VR, including The Weeknd, Luke Bryan, Jack White, and U2. And the combined views across some of these experiences in the tens of millions. In the live arena, artists like Avicii, Pink, and Bjork, along with festivals like Coachella, Electric Daisy Carnival, and the Austin City Limits, have all participated in 360 live streaming targeting VR customers. And recently launched videos from Eden and One Republic have generated nearly 2 million views across Facebook 360 and Oculus VR. So at millions upon millions of views, top music artists working in the space, and dozens of music games and apps live on the Oculus platform, we're certainly not starting at zero. But we also know we're just scratching the surface of what's actually possible. So just imagine a future of music in VR, album covers that you can walk into and participate and re-experience. Green room, being in the green room with your favorite artist just as he or she is about ready to go out on stage. Or an intimate look at how your favorite music artist creates samples and builds the music that you love. So our distinguished panel has participated in projects like these and is dreaming up many more for you to experience in the future. So let me let them take a few moments to introduce themselves. Michelle?
Hi, I'm Michelle. I head up creative content at Interscope Records. In that clip that you saw, if you were to look out the boys' room, I was smashed in the room with 10 other people to the left, and we were all hiding from the camera. Yeah, so I guess I describe my job as I'm like the chief cat herder. I explain to an artist why we should do a creative concept. I explain to an artist why we should shoot something in VR. I'm there on the shoot to make sure everything goes smoothly and then get it up to where it needs to be, like Facebook 360.
My name is John Sykes. I'm with iHeartMedia, with my great friend Bob Pittman, who we started out at MTV together as probably the age of most people in this room, of which I am not anymore. But I spend my time at iHeart, which is kind of funny. We're here at Oculus, but radio is probably the oldest business, been around, pre everything, almost to the guy with the sticks on the wall you're talking about there. But it was, there's 850 radio stations. We reach 265 million people a month, probably the biggest, I think, media platform, I think, in the world. And what I enjoy is taking great ideas that great artists come up with and using our scale to deliver, to reach large groups of people. I think because I grew up at MTV and I grew up at VH1, everything was about scale. If you did something, you had to do it well because you were reaching a lot of people and you had to create it. So that's what I love about what Oculus is doing, Facebook, and what's happening now with partners like Samsung. You're basically about to do, I think it's about to pop in a way that evolve like we did at MTV. And that's what I believe, what I love at iHeartRadio is that we get to do things like the festival the last weekend. It had everyone from Drake to U2 to Miley Cyrus to Sia, some of the most creative artists, One Republic, and create that scale, that kind of melting pot of incredible music, and millions of people show up.
Chris.
I'm Chris Milk. I started in music videos a long time ago. I have a company called Within that I'm the CEO of. We distribute and create a lot of virtual reality experiences, and I also have a company called Here Be Dragons, which is a production company that produces it. And Paula asked me to be on this panel.
Thank you.
And she's going to regret it.
Matt?
Hi, I'm Matt Davis. I've been playing guitar since I was a little kid and grew up on the East Coast playing a lot of live music in a really great live music scene. When I was a teenager, maybe it's because I was doing things I shouldn't have been doing, I got the idea I wanted to play the lights with my guitar. And that kind of led me down the path of creative coding and integration and production software. I started a company called namethemachine to provide artists, first and foremost myself, and then by extension a lot of other really great artists with tools to play the lights. And in a sort of evolving media landscape with live shows, that now means playing video and playing other people's instruments and playing things over the internet. And just kind of focused in expanding that space. And now with VR, it's really exciting to see what we can control in virtual reality with live music. So.
Great. So without further ado, Paula, can you introduce yourself and take us away with some questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Paula Cuneo, and I work in strategic marketing at Oculus, but mostly I'm a massive music fan, and so just wanted to get the cool kids together to talk. And as soon as we finish this panel, we'll probably have a cocktail and talk about how we can all do something cool together, so you'll regret being here. But I do think that, I would love just start with the video and talk about, we talk a lot about how how we get a client to engage in VR. We spent a lot of time just demoing and talking and evangelizing. What was it about the track, about this group, about this time in technology that you thought VR video, good idea?
So One Republic, they were busy finishing up their album, and we were talking to Ryan Tedder, the frontman of the band, and he told us one of his favorite things was actually Chris Milk's interactive Arcade Fire video. And he's like, for this album, I want to do something awesome like that. So when Nokia came to us with a potential partnership to make a VR music video together, we knew that One Republic would jump on board. Ryan, if you know anything about him, he loves VR. He owns his own gear. I think he has 3 sets of gear. He likens VR to the first time he held an iPhone, and he knew it was the future, and he knew it was going to take over. So it was an easy sell to him.
You need a champion.
Yeah,
Right? Yeah,
yeah.
it's fantastic.
So making this music video with OneRepublic was really easy because they were all about it. And it's hard sometimes to convince an artist what it's going to be like to shoot. The day's a little longer. You have to explain it to them. It's hard, but with OneRepublic, it was super easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Chris, you creative directed both. There were 2 videos, right? One 360 and one traditional.
I was moral support and a cheerleader. I really can't take any creative.
I'm not giving you credit. I'm just asking.
I know you're not.
Yeah.
But
Here we go.
So here's my.
This is what happened. So when we knew Nokia was going to partner with us for the VR video, of course, the first person we asked
Sure.
was Chris Milk. And then he said, I will creative direct, but I want one of my guys from Here Be Dragons to really take the reins on it. So we pulled in Hal Kirkland. And Hal's amazing. He's so smart. So anything that was presented to us from Hal, Chris sort of blessed. So that was the process.
So with 2 videos, one 360 and one traditional, and the traditional one coming first, like you launched that first, right?
Correct.
What are the creative parameters that makes one different or better when you're shooting it than another? I mean,
So this is the paradigm that we are faced with. When it comes to music right now, we're stuck with these marketing timelines and these album cycles, and there's these deadlines that we need to meet. So we knew we wanted to make this VR video, but we knew that the post process would take a minimum of 8 weeks. And that wasn't going to align when the single was going to hit radio, right? So of course, everyone is running around with their heads on fire, being like, what do we do? What do we do? We need this video. So we knew at first we didn't want to make the 2D video because we wanted everyone to just engage with the VR video, but it wasn't going to line up from a marketing perspective, which is something that the label has to think about, boring stuff. So we were like, let's make a 2D video that's going to tease the VR video. Let's make a 2D video and we hold back some stuff and we reveal it in the VR video. So we were super strategic in the creative, and we knew that once we had to make the 2D video, we wanted Hal to do both. And by using one director, he could be creative on how we set up the 2D video and the VR video. So you'll see both videos are one take. Both videos are shot at the same location. We have the same actors for both videos, but you see 2 different worlds. So we were really strategic with that. And so it actually turned out to be really fun, and I feel like we tackled that challenge.
yeah, and it's very sort of traditional video in the sort of narrative storytelling piece. And I wanted to ask Matt, who's been sort of right in the middle of visualizing sound for a long time. What do you think what's the ultimate live VR music experience? Have you sort of thought about?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely important to first define what live actually means in
okay.
VR. If you're trying to stream a live concert, you're not actually there. And until we have sort of full sensory immersion, there's always going to be a sensory gap where, being at a live show is one of the most visceral things you can actually experience. And that has to do with the fact your whole body is feeling sound waves. And as we get closer and closer to be able to jack in our brains and whatnot, we're going to start to erode that gap. But in the meantime, the questions I was trying to answer are, what are the ways to bridge that gap by augmenting different senses, or the senses that you do have, in the same way that someone without one of their senses, their other senses will compensate. The challenges that we've been looking at are, how do we use the existing performance data that we're getting off the stage and off the musician to create content, as close to the sound source as possible. So that can be anything from, audio analysis, working backwards from the sound. What are the actual sound waves, and how can we break that up into stems or different frequency bands to drive visual content? One step back from that would be, how's that sound being triggered or generated? Is somebody pushing buttons? somebody hitting a string? What's the sort of like articulation and dynamics involved with triggering that sound, and is that accessible data? There are, the parameters of a piece of music. What's the tempo? What's the key? What's the feeling? But as you get further and further away from that sound wave, it becomes harder and harder to build a metaphor for it or to abstract it like a level. And part of being at a live show is being like really hooked into everything that's happening. So it's like as you get further away, you kind of have to negotiate what presence and what visceral qualities you can communicate from not being there, and what you can't. I guess that's a long answer to.
Now, we were thinking about social VR today after the keynote, and I was talking to some friends. We're like, well, music, it's the most social experience there is. And I thought, when I go to a rock show and it's really good, I close my eyes and I couldn't care less who is around me. And I wonder, does a musical live or virtual experience need to be social to be compelling?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think if you were sitting in the room, across from your favorite artist, and it was just the two of you, is that social? Yes, because there's another person, but you're not necessarily with your friends. So I think if you're hanging out at a show, closing your eyes, maybe it's not about the other people, though they're contributing to the vibe that you feel, but it's definitely about you and another person sharing the same physical space and emotion in real time. Mm-hmm. So it's like, how far away can you get from that and still maintain that connection with the person? And for people who have the opposite experience, where it is very much about being with their friends, how do you create an environment where somebody can come in and have either experience? And then you start to get closer to what it's actually like to create, a live music experience in VR, I think.
Yeah. I'm going to just try asking you one more question and see if you answer it. So what is it then about music that inspires you to create the best of VR? Is it going to be, Chris, about narrative storytelling with a soundtrack? Is it about sort of just the inspiration of music and how that influences you cerebrally or viscerally? What is it about music that gets you going as far as what's next in VR?
I mean, I've always been really interested in music because it's just sort of raw human experience, and you understand it without it being explained to you. Jaron Lanier is like the godfather of virtual reality, had this concept of post-symbolic communication back in the 80s, which he thought could be the future of virtual reality, which is the idea is centered around that we communicate primarily through verbal and written symbols in the form of words. So if I want to explain something to you, I have to have all these verbal symbols that come out of my mouth, and you hear them and you understand what I'm saying. And if I want to convey an emotion to you, or a state of mind, or a feeling, I have to verbally explain it or write it out to you. And the idea is that because virtual reality is basically captured or created human experience that you can live, that it goes beyond our traditional way of communicating to one another, and that in the future we might be able to communicate not using words and written symbols, but just through communicating emotion, through the evolution of version 27 of what virtual reality becomes. And what's interesting is music is sort of the original non-symbol-based communication tool. It's probably predates verbal communication possibly, and there's something in that. And I've always found deep inspiration in music for most of the things that I do. Even when I'm starting to concept a story, before I even understand what the story is or the film is, I'm trying to find the soundtrack to it, and the music can actually help me evolve. I mean, I came from music videos, which was very much always a process of. I mean, it's a wonderful process. You're taking a song and try to figure out what the visual component is to go along with it, and it's sort of like it's reverse scoring. Like it's the opposite of what a film composer does. You're just trying to score picture to music. And it's like an incredibly powerful fuel for creativity, because there's so many different facets and levels to it that you can find your way into something, even if you're just using it, even if you're pulling into a process that you're already on the trail of one story, you can evolve the story even further from using music.
So it's interesting. John and I were talking a little bit about how there was a time when musicians didn't want pictures ruining their music, and I wonder when would you see the parallel now in terms of where VR is going, when you pull in artists and someone can create a storyline around music or score something in storytelling in VR? It's very, very similar to music videos.
I see a lot of parallels between VR today and what we went through at the beginning of MTV with these things called music videos that no one in America saw because they were only made in Europe and Australia because they didn't have any radio stations there. And the only way you could be discovered was on a TV show like the old Gray Whistle Test or Ready, Steady, Go or Top of the Pops, because the radio was owned by the government and they would basically be stories. It was like NPR, wonderful stories, but you weren't going to get the Rolling Stones in your own country. So basically the radio was breaking them in America. So videos were around. But in America, they were nothing. They were sitting in boxes in the back of record stores, whatever. But I see the parallel is that you look at now VR, it's so beautiful. The technology is there. It's been there, but it's getting better and better. The way I believe you reach scale in any business, the way you have a hit television show, you have a hit product, you have an iPhone, an iPod, whatever it might be, or in the case of MTV, is when you have the intersection of technology and consumer demand. For kids to say, I gotta have it. I've got to have this. When you have them both, it's like a negative and a positive wire. When you put them together, it lights the room up. And there have been many products that have come and gone, or ideas have come and gone, 8 tracks, all those things, because they really weren't that great. There wasn't a demand. So what happened at MTV, we were just too dumb. We were 24 and had an idea and thought it was great. And we just thought, well, yeah, I grew up with 3 channels. I want to have lots of channels. And there's this thing called cable TV, which has a bunch of snow on these channels. And there was a time when there's nothing on. There's probably nothing on today or not. But anyway, all of a sudden, I said, let's put one of these channels and put music videos on. And it was that simple. But we just thought it was a good idea. What was happening, we didn't even know. We learned in hindsight was that you had technology. Cable television had been around since the 50s because people in little towns needed it to get the big city channels into their little rural areas, but that's all it was going to be until there was a generation of baby boomers who were like, I don't want to watch all this crappy TV to get to see Eric Clapton on the Johnny Cash show. I want to basically get this all the time, and the two intersected. And after 3 years of almost going out of business every week, we were an overnight sensation. But that's what happened. But I see a lot of the same things in VR. I see the Patrick Watson video, and I go, wow, there's something there that connected me. I have to watch that again. Or Chris, when he did the video, did you do the one, the Syrian refugees? And I was like, the empathy I had watching it, I was like, I could only get that through VR. So and MTV, when we saw them, it wasn't the Michael Jackson Thriller video, it was the Billie Jean video that Steve Barron directed, where he walked up these steps and they lit up, and you said, wow, I think this is going to happen. And every high school kid had to go home. They drove their parents crazy. The I want my MTV campaign we started, and they demanded that they put these cable setups in their houses, and they were off. Same thing, VR. What's going to make me put on the goggles? What's going to make me do that? And I think I see it's the train coming around the corner with the bright light. When you see the Arcade Fire piece musically, or you see the Syrian refugee piece, or you see that Patrick Watson video, you go, that's what VR can do. That secret, private, amazing moment will bring me closer to the music. Now I've got to have it. And that's where I think you are right now.
So it kind of begs the question then, episodic content, like that's what MTV had in VH1, right? Like, do you feel like this piece kind of stands alone and will be enough of a draw? Do you think that episodic content in VR music is going to be, do we need a channel?
I've thought about this because I do think we will be making episodic content in VR, documentary content in VR, but I want to be smart about it. I see VR working for, the Syrian refugees or CNN, and there's a journalistic approach to it. You want to know more, and you want to be taken there. When we go to make this type of content with our artists, I want to make sure we don't do it unless we have a really compelling story to tell first. Kendrick Lamar taking us to Compton. Like, there's a story there. I don't just want to do Kendrick Lamar in the studio. DJ Snake, who's from Paris, let's really go to the streets of Paris and see how he grew up. So I do see it happening. I want to be really smart about how it happens and make sure we're telling the right stories and approach it like a journalist.
And I had a greatest experience walking in here today. We were meeting with Colin and John on some things, and I'm walking down the hallways, and I thought I was walking into a great old James Bond movie when he was going in to get all his toys and tricks to fight off the bad guys when he would go into that R&D area, because there are people with the goggles on going like, they're all experimenting with all the different content. And it made me say, this is exactly what you should be doing. Creating content, building a library, making mistakes, and then finding the Steve Barron video, finding the Syrian video, the Patrick Watson video, where you go, that's it, and you'll begin to find those pieces. But you have to right now be in an aggressive content mode, because you have to make a lot of mistakes. But one thing, the public, Consumer Reports wrote about VR last month. 65-year-old people read that. So it's no longer the edgy whatever. Everyone's talking about it. I'm saying the consumer, it's hitting its tipping point where you can't go online, read a HuffPost story, you can't go there. So it's bubbling to the point where when you just talked about episodic content, absolutely keep making it, and some of it's going to be crappy, and the good stuff's going to come out, and that's just like making records or movies or any other art form. And then you basically hit the spot, and then you'll get people rushing in to make that content.
And Matt, do you have? I know you work with a lot of music clients in live shows. Do you have them sort of saying like, I want to do it in VR, I need to do it in VR, or is it a matter of sort of, pushing them along?
Yeah, well, everybody likes new toys.
Yeah.
I think, to your question about, or point about there being this like initial resistance to, putting pictures to sound, I think there's always an initial resistance to like any new medium that has the kind of chance of obscuring or adding context to music. So you're saying it's just the purest thing that you can do. It bypasses anything visual and is solely like metaphor, and it's always in the eye of the person that's listening to interpret it. So anytime you put a picture to sound, you're automatically adding or changing something. And the best audio-visual collaborations are things that either clarify the point of a piece of music or add another perspective or another layer without taking away from the initial point. So it's not something that a lot of musicians sort of just take lightly and are willing to just throw spaghetti at the wall in public. I think, I played in a band in college, and my first experience with one of my friends, sorry, John, who was our lighting guy, was just horrible. Like, it was making me play badly, and it just didn't work. And that's what sort of, led me to think, like, why can't I just play this myself? And like, what's involved in doing that? And how do we, create these sort of like integration pathways and a language and a logic around, translational media and using sort of like digitalism as a means to get information from one place to another, and trying to figure out what, at least from a live show perspective, what like that musical data could possibly be, and how to organize it, and keep the performing artist in control of this kind of sprawling, multimodal, massive production system has been like a real.
Well, I think the storytelling has faded. It has faded from music, because there was a time when you bought that record and you looked at the liner notes and you saw this guy, Jimmy Miller, worked on this Rolling Stones record, but he didn't get any credit. But he did this, he did that, and this is what Bobby Keys did, and you had layers of information and emotion. So when you listened to that record, the context was incredible, and that went away, obviously, with the cassette, and then the CD, and then, of course, with the downloads. And this connection with the artist is something that virtual reality, I think, can bring back through storytelling, because the intimacy of that Watson video was like, I felt I was at the center of the creation of a piece of music in a very quiet space. And it wasn't fireworks going off, pyro, and a band playing live, and oh my God, VR. VR really was the intimacy that we've lost, because all those hours you'd spend, and I'm the old guy here, so I would look at the liner notes. I'd read everything, because I wanted to know everything about Frank Zappa. I wanted to know everything about those artists, and I want to know who Sam Cooke was. He was already, by the time I was growing up, he was just died around then. But I learned through that, and I believe through the times you've hit it with VR are the times you've really, it's not even on the stage. Sometimes it's back in a room.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And Chris, you've made more music content, I think, than anybody up here, so by a long shot. We're all working on it. Do you find that, like, going to the ambisonic sound panel today and thinking about spatial audio, do artists say, like, don't mess with my stems, I don't want you to tweak my music because it's still mine, or are they totally generous about how you make it sound right in VR?
I've worked with some very generous artists. I've never had that problem. In fact, I've mangled some songs to the degree that I thought artists would be really pissed off. I mean, especially I was working with Kanye early on in my career and his career, and I would take his track and edit it and change it and extend it in this part and shorten it in this part because I needed to for the story, and I would show it to him and be like, "You're not gonna like this," and he'd be like, "I'm fine with it." I did a Gnarls Barkley video where it had dialogue over the whole thing, and I said to them, "It's going to be a story. There's going to be dialogue. I will shoot it. I'm going to record it with dialogue, and I'll show you a version that has no dialogue, just subtitles, and a version with dialogue." And they looked at it and they said, "It's better with the dialogue. We can't hear our song, but it is better, and we'll just go with that." So it all depends on the artist that you're working with, I think.
That sounds like, I think when we talk to people that are working in VR, this panel is no exception. You've got to have someone who really wants it, right? They're willing to manipulate their brand or manipulate their art or their lyrics or their sound just so that they can be a part of something, and there's much more flexibility there.
Each artist is definitely very different. Even when we make a 2D video, and let's say a video is going to MTV, and we need to drop a curse word, some artists don't care, and they'll just let us do it themselves. But you take an artist like Pharrell, and he'll be like, no, you can't drop the F-bomb, I have to do it. And so I'll be sitting there all night waiting for Pharrell to be in a studio to drop the F-bomb before I can give it to MTV. So some artists truly are that precious.
You have a great job.
Can't hurt her. So, yeah, an F-bomb. Yep, that's happened to me.
I'll be back to dinner as soon as he drops the
Yeah, and you just have to sort of feel an artist out. You just over time get to know each artist's little quirks. For One Republic, for the VR video, we had experimented with spatial audio, and I remember we took the gear to Kimmel where they were about to do a show to give them a chance to listen to it, and it really threw them off. Mm-hmm. So we had to make tweaks. I think we went through 7 rounds of audio to get to where we landed.
Sarah, it's my mom.
Oh, okay, it's fine. You can take it.
She wants to know where I am.